Well, what is up, everyone, and happy NFL New Year! It is the official start of the 2024-25 NFL season. Tonight we have the defending champion Chiefs on banner night, hosting the Ravens in a rematch of last year's AFC title game, although this time at the Chiefs venue. Of course, the Chiefs ended with confetti on them last season, winning the Super Bowl 58, and repeating and becoming the first team since the Patriots to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And unfortunately, us Eagles fans remember when the Patriots repeated because it was Super Bowl 39 against the Eagles where they did. Kansas City got their first of the two against us in Super Bowl 57, but then beat the Niners in overtime in a very exciting finish to the Super Bowl last season. And of course, at the end of last season, as we all know, look, before we go forward, we're going to go back a little bit because at the end of last season, when I did my final video for the Season of the Fan series, Season 10 of Season of the Fan, so now we're going into Season 11. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's already 11 years doing this. But yes, Season 11 of Season of the Fan. And as Season 10 ended, my last video there, I was pretty adamant, wasn't I, about what I would hope the Eagles would do in the offseason. And the biggest thing that I had hoped for the offseason is that they would release Nick Sirianni as of his head coaching job. My thoughts on it were that I did not like, obviously, as any Eagle fan, we did not like how that season ended when in a whimper in Tampa Bay in a playoff game. How they just didn't show up. How he seemed to have lost the locker room. Players, it was even rumored that they were running their own plays at some point during during that debacle. And it just didn't sit right with me. And I understand just a year before they were 3 points away from beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 57, and I get that, but it's a year-to-year league. It's a what have you done for us lately world, right? And the end of last season was just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. It was the worst way to end a season. I would have rather not made the playoffs, to be honest, last season, the way that ended. I was at the game at the Meadowlands, at the cold Meadowlands, the icy Meadowlands, late January last year with my buddy Slim, or early January, whenever that game was. I guess it was early January against the New York Football Giants, and that was as ugly as it gets. Terrible game. And I mean, the one I guess plus is we did see Saquon's last touchdown as a Giant. If you would have told us he was going to be an Eagle the very next season, we probably wouldn't have believed it. But there you go. More on that a little later. But it was ugly, and I don't have to take you all back to it. We all know how the season ended, from a 10-1 start to just horrendous loss after loss. Just they just looked listless, and a lot of them. They changed the defensive coordinator. They did different things. Nothing seemed to work, and at the head of it all, you got to look at the head coach and you got to look at the quarterback, and they both made plenty of mistakes to contribute in a big way to how the season ended. And at the end of the day, you're not going to move on from the quarterback who you just paid a lot of money. I thought it would behoove them to move on from the coach. And my fear going into this season is that if he could lose the locker room once, it could happen again. And I just figured, cut ties at this point. It just doesn't make sense to bring him back, after how that ended. You can't end a season like that and have hopes to correct everything and everything's going to be kumbaya the next season. Now, as an Eagles fan, I feel as any fan does about their team. I want my team to succeed. And regardless of who the coach is right now, my hope for this season is that they succeed. And look, I mean, can Sirianni turn it around? Yeah. I mean, there's a possibility of that, right? There's a lot of talent on this team, and that doesn't always guarantee anything. Unless you're Kansas City. Unless you're my friend Anthony at Pro Image, and you have a team with Patrick Mahomes and a starting tight end who's dating Taylor Swift, and you're coached by one of the all-time greats in Spags, who goes from 1 year having the youngest defense in the league to the next year having one of the best defenses in the league because of coaching, and you have You have a terrific front office, and you have a coach in Big Red who has more bling on his fingers than Taylor Swift. So, unless you're charmed with that, or you're a fan of those Patriots teams back in those years when they were having their dynasty runs, yeah, I mean, you have to kind of deal with angst, and you have to deal with, oh my God, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Right? It's a slippery slope, and again, my fear going into this season is twofold. A, I am worried a bit about the head coach. I still am. I would be lying if I said I wasn't. B, I don't know what this team is going to be. This team, listen, this season is so different going into this season because this team can end with confetti on them in Super Bowl 59 and hoisting the Lombardi in the Big Easy at the end of the season, or a team that can miss the playoffs. I mean, we don't know exactly what this team is going to be. And I'm not going to use the term on paper because we all know what you can do with paper in the bathroom, right? So, but yes, they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent, particularly on offense, but they have a lot of talent as well on defense. Some of it might be unproven, and we're going to have to see about that as the season goes along. And there's a lot of corrections that need to be made after last season, how poorly they played, in that second half of the season last year. You had Kyler Murray, Mr. Call of Duty, going up and down the field on them. I mean, Baker Mayfield. I mean, that Giants offense. I mean, Seattle won a game on a last, minute drive. These things shouldn't have happened, but it was just too inconsistent. And there was enough blame to go around. I know Nick Sirianni takes the most of it because he's the head coach. There was a lot of blame to go around, from the coaches to the players to the front office. Too many mistakes were made as the season wore on. But I will say this. Look, to have success, as we know, you have to have the coaching staff, clicking on all cylinders. Everything needs to work together. It's like the engine of a vehicle. You need so many different little parts to work and connect and spark for that engine to run, right? You need the coaching staff to be working on all cylinders. You need the players to be working on, and play calling needs to be there. You need the players to be doing it. You need the players to execute those play calls, right? You need the front office, right? Maybe instead of going after a Shaq Leonard, as a guy off the scrap heap, maybe you draft a Jeremiah Trotter Jr., right, in the draft, and maybe that works out. Right? We're going to see about that, right? But you need everything to work, and it needs to be in harmony. And, yeah, there are going to be times of frustration. There are going to be times where, look, I mean, even the Chiefs last season, I watched America's game last night, as I do every year, right? I think NFL Films does such a great job with it. And obviously it chronicalizes the team that won the Super Bowl the year prior. And the Chiefs at one point towards the end of the season last year were only a game above 500. I mean, they weren't like this incredible juggernaut, but they became that, right? Because they knew that they had the pieces to do it. They knew because they did it before. They came together, corrections were made, and they go on and they win 2 road games and go to a Super Bowl and win in overtime against the very good San Francisco team. Now, that might be an outlier because not every team is the Chiefs or the Patriots dynasty or the Steelers of the 70s or the Niners of the 80s, right? They're very few and far between those kind of teams. Now, I think we're lucky because we have a very good football team here. We have a team that most years competes. Most years the Eagles are in the playoffs, whether they're a division champion or not. Not too long ago, they won a Super Bowl. Just a few years ago, they were in another Super Bowl, right, with a chance to win that one if, things went their way at the end. So I do feel fortunate that at least my team is I would consider one of the upper echelon teams of the league. They will, more than likely kind of be one of the teams there at the end, but we'll see. So we go into the offseason right now. I said at the end of last season, Sirianni needs to go. They need to cut ties. I don't know if I can trust him going forward. But the Eagles front office and brass thought otherwise, and they kept him. Now they got him 2 new shiny new coordinators, right? They got I can't remember Kellen Moore for offense. and they got a veteran in Vic Fangio for defense. Now, we're going to see how these work out, right? I happen to like the Fangio hire because I felt that this team needed an old school, like, kind of plant his feet in the dirt, kind of, defensive coordinator, a guy who's been around a long time that could mold a defense, kind of the way like Spags does in Kansas City. Now, I'm not calling Fangio Spags, but in that kind of ilk, right? And we remember, speaking of Big Red, many years ago, he brought in Jim Johnson and how well that worked out. Now, again, we're going to have to see. Jim Johnson was on his whole nother level. If Vic Fangio can be in that kind of mold. But the one thing I do feel good about Vic is that he's seen offense for many years. He's seen many different offenses and knows how to combat many different offenses. So I think some of the mistakes that you saw last season that continued to happen and were not corrected by the coaching staff, I think you'll get those corrections this year with a Vic Fangio. Keenan Allen, that's a receiver. Kellen Moore for offense. Listen, he's young. He has been around a little bit. He was on Dallas, right? At the Chargers, LA last year. That team was just bad. It fell apart last season. I don't blame it all on him. I know, Dallas in the years he was there. Maybe their fans can talk a little more about him than I can. But, they had pretty good offenses those years. Look, he kind of created Dak Prescott. So, I'd like to see what he does with Jalen Hurts, who's kind of a similar quarterback to Prescott. He's an athletic guy. He can get away. He has a good arm. Still has years to learn and grow in the position. And I'm interested to see what Moore is going to do with Jalen Hurts. But at the end of the day, it's all about Jalen, and he has got to make the changes that needed to be made. I think we're going to see somewhat of a more similar to what we saw out of him in 2022, where he was a runner-up of the league MVP and had a fantastic season, got to the Super Bowl, really outdid Mahomes in the Super Bowl. It didn't work out for us in the end, and unfortunately he made the one mistake early in the game, which, what was a bad mistake. But at the end of the day, I thought he had a really, aside from that mistake, a very good Super Bowl and a very good season. Last season, there were times where he looked like that 2022 Jalen Hurts, where he was executing, where they were going down. I remember the game winner against, Buffalo and the shootout wins that he had during the season, and then it just fell apart. And he's not without blame. We talked about, right, moving on from Sirianni. Jalen Hurts wasn't without blame last season. He made too many mistakes, particularly with the football. You can't turn over the football the way he turned it over last season and expect to win games. The turnovers have to be less this season, right? The fumbling, the interceptions. You can't turn the ball over at the rate that they turned the ball over last season and hope to succeed. You just can't. As we all know, it's a simple game sometimes. It looks very difficult and different little things going on, but at the end of the day, the name of the game is simple. You gotta protect the football on offense, and you gotta stop the other team on defense. And sometimes that's easier said than done, right? The other team gets paid to make plays too. I get that. But Jalen has to play better, and I believe he will. I'm still a Jalen Hurts fan. I still think he's a very good quarterback. I think that he got it. I just think it all kind of unwinded last season with everybody, with Jalen, with the coaches, with the rest of the players, with the defense, with everything. It just completely. It was like a house of cards that just collapsed, and it's like that game Jenga, right? You pull one wrong thing and everything just collapsed, and they pulled one wrong thing and everything just collapsed, and that was it. And it was ugly last season, as we all know here in Eagles land, right? So the offseason, it's hard to grade an offseason until the season is complete. And I never try to do it because I could say that Howie, oh, look, he hit this home run and that home run. Oh, look at Howie, right? Great offseason, great draft, great moves at the deadline and the free agency rather, and the hires of the coaching staff and whatnot, right? We don't know until the end of the season how everything's going to pan out. I think there were hits, and I think there were misses. I do believe that, of course, I mean, look, some of them, I mean, are just layups, right? Bringing back CJGJ on defense at safety was a big hit, right? We loved him when he was here. And then when he wasn't here last year, and you can't, he's a guy that led them in takeaways a year before, and then he wasn't on the field. And you can see the difference, right, with that defense. The swagger was gone. And he brings that swagger onto the field, right? He's got to stay healthy, but he brings that swagger. He just has that confidence, right? That swag. He has it. And we missed it last season, right, with him in Detroit. So I think that was certainly a hit. Obviously, Saquon Barkley was a hit in my mind. Now, I know people say, well, you don't pay too much money to a running back. He's been in the league in, how many years. Look, I mean, I understand that, but he's a special back. And I think on this offense, with the potential of what the offensive line can be, and when you have Jalen Hurts and the wide receivers that they have, the weapons all over the field, right? It's a special kind of offense. It's a different kind of offense than he had with the Giants. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are two better wide receivers than he ever had with the Giants, right? Dallas Goedert might be a better tight end that he ever had with the Giants. This offensive line, this quarterback, is better than anything he ever had with the Giants, right? For the most part, throughout his career. And you match him with this, the potential there is for him to be to just be have an incredible season. Now, obviously, the play calling has to be there. And us in Eagle Land, we're still kind of wondering what the play calling is going to be, right? You're not going to show anything in the preseason. And it's been said to death about the starters not playing in the preseason. They never play in the preseason under Nick Sirianni. They went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. No one was talking about the preseason then. Even last season when they were falling apart, no one was talking about the preseason when it got to December and January, right? It is what it is. Now, look, were there some reasons to start, maybe give them a series here and there when you have a new offensive coordinator and you have some new, juggling some guys on the offensive line because, Jason Kelce retired. Now you have Juergens in at center. Maybe you need that snap count and everything. Everything has to be correct. I mean, Slim and I were talking about not long ago, and while there's merit to it, at the end of the day, you got to do it in the regular season, right? So I just think too much is made of that, and it's every year. It's like clockwork. It's during the slow time, too, on sports talk radio where there's really not a lot. There's no NBA, there's no NHL. Baseball still quite isn't at the stretch drive. So what are we going to talk about? They don't play starters in the preseason games. They don't give a series to Hurts. Why? I'm glad those are done. Look, I mean, we can complain about it until we're blue in the face. It's not going to matter. Nick Sirianni's never going to change. He believes in not starting at least the offensive starters in preseason games because he doesn't want to risk an injury. He doesn't want to risk something happening, and then everyone's going to point at him and say, why did you keep Jalen Hurts in that preseason game where that third-string guy took out his knees? Why? So that's his philosophy, and look, he has power to do it, right? So at any rate, getting back to the main crust of this, I do believe that the Saquon Barkley decision to bring him in and give him that contract was a hit. Now it has to work out, but I believe it will, and I believe that was a very good move. There were misses. I mean, look, you have obviously stalwarts retiring in Kelce and Cox. And did they do enough to replace them? Time will tell for the center position. I believe Cam Juergens will get the job done. I mean, he was basically handpicked by Kelce to replace him. And it's one of the reasons why he felt he could retire after last season because they had Juergens in place to take his spot. Defensively, though, Big Fletch is going to be missed. That's a big, big loss. And I don't think they did enough to replace him. Now, you're not going to replace a legend like a Fletcher Cox, such as you're not going to replace a legend like a Jason Kelce. But I believe they had more in place to take his spot, whereas on the defensive side of the ball, I don't think they had enough in place, or they got enough in place in the offseason to take the spot of a Fletcher Cox. That's a guy that takes up a double team every snap. And without him there, who's going to take up the double team? Maybe Carter, maybe. But, I mean, it just makes the job that much easier for an opposing offensive line to keep the Eagles' pass rush at bay. So what does that mean? And this is where I'm glad that we have a veteran defensive coordinator. That means that you're going to have to blitz more. And I think that with Vic Fangio, you're going to see this defense blitz more than they have. At least I would hope so. Because that's one of the things that was really missing from this defense over the past, year. The year prior, they led the league in sacks. And they did a pretty good job blitzing, and they did a good job disguising their blitzing schemes, right? And last season, you didn't see that. It was just so vanilla. It was horrible. So I'm hoping that this season, when you have more of a veteran eyes as a defensive coordinator in Fangio who's seen it all, who knows what it takes to put together a solid defense and defensive schemes, I'm hoping that means that this team will blitz more and they'll get pressure on the quarterback that way, because you can't just rely on the front four. I just don't think there's enough there. The rotation, I don't think there's enough there on the defensive ends and in the middle. And I like Jalen Carter. I really do. But I still haven't seen enough of him to say, okay, you don't have to worry because we got 98 there. I still have to see more from him. And I certainly have to see more from Davis to really say, okay, they got it solidified. We're good. No, I do think they're going to blitz more, and I think that they have young linebackers where you can do that. And I like their approach this offseason. I do. They brought in Jeremiah Trotter Jr. from the draft. We're hoping that Kobe Dean can stay healthy. We'll see. But if so, you have two very good, potentially good young linebackers that are athletic, that can make some plays, and we haven't seen that for a number of years in this Eagles defense. So it would be a welcome to see. And I know they got White from Tampa Bay, and he's injured now with an ankle, not going to play in week 1. I really don't know what we're going to get out of him this season. We might not get anything out of him this season. And you know what? If it means that Nakobe Dean and Axeman Jr. are out there making plays week to week and are looking great, okay, I mean, that's a good trade-off as far as I'm concerned, because those guys are your future. White is only a hired gun who's going to be here for this season, and then he's out of here, right? If he lasts the whole season, unless they trade him or they release him or something like that. But I do think that he brings some value because he's a veteran voice in an otherwise young linebacking core who does have some bling on his finger from winning the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay and being a big part of that defense under Todd Bowles, Temple Tough, those years ago when they beat Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So I think that his voice might carry some weight there in that linebacker room, and if that's what we get out of him this season, awesome. And if Nakobe Dean can stay healthy and make plays, and Trot Jr.'s out there making plays, and whoever else they got linebackers is making plays, hey, that's more than we could say since Trot Jr.'s old man was playing, right? At least it seems that way. I know they had some decent linebacker play of the year. They won the Super Bowl. Bad News Bradham and them. But for the most part, other than that, and I know they've been unlucky. Kendricks couldn't stay healthy, right? They had other guys that couldn't stay healthy, young linebackers, they couldn't stay healthy. It's no fault of their own, but it has been a blind spot of that, of their, how they go about drafting and how they assess defensive talent, each year in the draft. But again, I was very happy, and I was at Slim's when this happened. I was very happy when they drafted Jeremiah Trotter Jr. because he can play. And I know he wasn't a top pick and anything like that. You don't have to be. If you can play, you can play. And I think he can play. And we'll see. Time will tell. This is just my opinion. I'm not a scout. I have no idea, right? I might play Madden from time to time. Not always very well. But but I do think Trot Jr. is going to be a good player in this league. And he's wearing his old man's number 54. And he looks good in that Eagles, midnight green and Kelly green when they wear it this season twice. So we're going to have to say, hey, time to be told on that, right? I didn't like the fact they moved on from Hassan Reddick. I would consider that a miss. Now, I do understand that that they traded him to the Jets, and he hasn't had anything to do with the Jets so far that he's been there, because if there's one franchise that we remember from Hard Knocks the offseason with the Giants, if there's one franchise in the Meadowlands that seems to be worse than the Giants, it might be the Jets. They just don't seem to know what the hell they're doing, right? You make a trade, you get a premier pass rusher, and you don't want to pay him. But why did you make the trade? It kind of goes together. Now, I don't know. But anyhow, that's their problem. I would have kept Hassan. I would have extended him. He's Temple tough. He's a local guy. He's produced since he's been on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I don't know what kind of guy he was in the locker room. I don't know, and I'm not even going to speculate because I'm not in there if there was anything to do with that, how last season ended, and that's why they decided to move on from Hassan. I myself, I would have kept the guy. I would have paid him. I think he was worth it. He's a very good pass rusher, and I think under the Vic Fangio system, he would have really done a great job. And Vic would have known how to use Hassan at his strengths, aside from the pencil man last year and the side before him, who put him more in the linebacker position. He's not a linebacker. I know he can play linebacker, but he's a pass rusher. He's an edge rusher. Use him as what his strength is. That's why he's going to get paid whenever he gets paid, because he gets pressure on the opposing quarterback. Niner fans remember. Oh, I didn't want to bring that up, but, it had to be said. But anyhow, I'm going to miss Hassan. I thought he was a great signing when they got him. He produced. He was a big part of that 2022 defense that led the league in sacks. He was a monster. And last season, he didn't put up the numbers that he did the year before. None of them did. But I thought it was a shame to let him go, and I still say that was a miss, that was a bad decision on Howie's part. But time will tell. I mean, look, they got Huff, ironically from the Jets, as a free agent. They paid him. He really is kind of unproven. He had a decent year last year. That's why he got the money he got this year. It was his first really good year. And look, I know a lot went wrong with the Jets, but he actually kind of stood out as part of that defense. And maybe it will work out here. But again, if I was calling the shots, I don't get Huff and I keep Reddick. And maybe even bring in another pass rusher as in the offseason. But, again, it's their prerogative. They're going to do what they're going to do or not do what they're not going to do. Right? I can just speak as a fan here on YouTube where I'm making no money. Where this is a free channel. And give my fan opinion about the season. This is going on 11 seasons now. I still can't believe it's been 11 seasons. And we've seen it all, haven't we? We've been a part of a lot of things here on the channel for this In the Life series. From the top of the Super Bowl championship to terrible seasons to the Chip Kelly experience to the last season. That was cold there in Meadowlands. I don't think I'm going back there anytime soon. Slim and I are talking about going to Cincinnati this year for the Eagles-Bengals game. Cincinnati, Slim has Ohio ties, and he has family there. He's actually there now, so we're looking forward to doing that. Hopefully, we can make that happen. That's going to be our road trip for this season. We're going to try to get to one road game every year. I think that's our plan. And God, I hope it's better than last one. Oh, that was. I think we're avoiding December and January from now on. I think we're going to... It's bad enough that the team looked like crap, but it was frigid cold there, and it was... and the Giant fans whooping it up for the first time in decades against the Eagles, and it was... Oh, my. That was tough. But, yeah, listen... This offseason is going to be judged at the end of this season. That's when it should be judged. We can talk about what they did right and what they did wrong now. It's not going to matter until you suit them up and you play these, 17 games this season, going into the postseason and hopefully making a nice long postseason run, which hopefully ends in confetti on top of us in New Orleans, right? Best case scenario, right? But we're going to see, and like I said earlier, this is a fascinating season because it can go here or it can go real quick. And to me, the most interesting thing about this season is going to be when this team loses a couple games in a row. Because it's going to happen, right? They're not going to go undefeated, and they're not going to, I wouldn't imagine they're not going to have a time where they lose 2 or 3 in a row. And what's going to happen if that happens? How are they going to stay connected? Is Sirianni still going to have control of the team, or is he going to lose it again? That's my concern. And again, people can say what they want. Oh, flip-floppy or whatever, this and that. Oh, you were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now next year you want to lose your coach. Again, my fear for keeping him here is, what if things start to go wrong this season when they do lose a couple games in a row, or they have a game where they're disconnected a bit and it's just not looking great? Can they get that back? Can he do what head coaches got to do in those situations, or is it going to blow up in his face again and he's just going to sit there and talk about roots and his time in college and his brother? I don't know. And again, I'm not trying to knock the guy, but I need to see more this season out of Nick Sirianni. If things start to look, if they go on a 2 or 3 game losing streak, I want to see change. I want to see him be a head coach, right? Have that voice, be able to turn it around. And I know his first year in the league, yeah, they turned it around. They started terrible. They started, for the most part, pretty bad. And then they started turning it around, right? The roots were growing in the ground and everything. And they turned it around, and they were able to make the playoffs that year. Now, they lost in poor fashion. I'm a little tired of playing Tampa Bay. Can we avoid them somehow this year in the playoff? Can we just not go to Tampa Bay? Bad things happen there. Bad things. It's not where we need to be in the playoffs. Just avoid them. And if the Niners can get knocked out early somehow, some way, pretty please. I mean, teams that lose the Super Bowl the next year, they kind of have a problem. I mean, we know that. I think their fans need to have a season the way we had last year. That's what I think. Hey, Resin Bay Area, how are you? Now, but again, that's going to be my concern, and it's going to be a concern until I see otherwise. Right? If this team loses a couple games in a row, and then they come out and they play like gangbusters, and they win some games, and they get right back on track, until I see that, I'm still going to worry about it. And look, it's just going to be natural. It's natural for me. It's natural for probably just about every other Eagle fan out there. We're going to be thinking about that throughout the season. And it's not going to matter how this team starts. They could start, 12-0. In the back of our mind, we're still going to be thinking about, that 10-1 start last year, and then then it didn't really go very well, right? The rest of the way. So, and it's a shame we have to feel this way. It is, but they did it to us. They did it to us. They're to blame. Fans are going to fan. That's what it is, and I know I do. God knows I do. I've been called on the carpet for it, a time or two as well, for being the fanatic that I am. But that's what fan is short for. I mean, that's what it is, right? I love my Birds. I've been watching them since '92, since the Kelly Greens, and then I've been through so much with this team, and I always hope for the best. I always do. And when things start to fall apart and there's blame that has to be made, I'm gonna blame. I'm gonna point the finger at who I think should be blamed. And last season, I think there was enough blame to go around, but I only have one finger, so I pointed it at Nick Sirianni and said, "That's the guy. It's him." And to the point, listen, and I don't think I'm misguided for that. To the point that the team, that the front office gave him less responsibility this season to do. So I don't know how much they really believe in Nick Sirianni, even though he did guide them to a Super Bowl just a few years ago. But again, I look at that Super Bowl, and I look at the difference between Doug Peterson and his Super Bowl against another dynasty in the Patriots, and how he coached in that game and was, kept his foot on the pedal and was aggressive the entire game. And I saw Nick Sirianni in a winnable game against a great team, and a great head coach in Andy Reid, and a great defensive coordinator in Spags. But I still saw, instead of being aggressive in the second half, he wasn't. He punted the ball on 4th down. And you can't do that against teams like Kansas City. You got to go for it. You got to have the coyoons that Peterson had, just a few years prior. Not that long prior, I should say, in Super Bowl 52. Go for it. Be aggressive. You can't just sit back there and give the ball back to good old Gimpy, as he was in that game, Patrick Mahomes. It is what it is. Listen, we're talking about something from 3 years ago now, but it's still, it's there. It's there. And then when I saw how last season ended, and it just, I try not to remember, but you can't. It's old war wounds at this point. I mean, that's what it is. I'm gonna have that concern. I am, and I hope that I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. As a fan, I want this team to win. I want to win. I want to win again. I know how precious and special Super Bowl 52 was. I don't want to just sit on 52. I want another. Can I have another? I know it sounds greedy. Chiefs fans win a lot. Patriot fans had their time. Other fan bases have more. I want multiple. I want more Lombardis here, right? I've had a lifetime of most years we don't get it. So, you can't blame me for wanting more than just the one. Yeah, special as that one was. I want more. I want more success. I want my team to have success. Is that too much to ask? I know every fan base in the league wants their team to have success. I get it. Even if you're a fan of the Carolina Panthers right now, right? Like a buddy of mine is. But I keep trying. The Eagles. Yeah. You can come over if you want. He's from Carolina, so he's a diehard fan. He has a tattoo and everything. I'm like, well, if you want a little break. Oh, my goodness. I joke because I can. But anyhow, listen, week 1, tomorrow night, in São Paulo, Brazil, right? Brazil, my goodness. If you would have told me that we're gonna have a season opener on a Friday night, nonetheless, but not only on a Friday night, but in Brazil, Eagles, Packers. Oh my God! I mean, I never would have believed that, but here we are, right? So the Eagles are in Brazil right now. They'll be playing the Packers tomorrow night, and it should be a good game. And it's the first game of the season. You just never know what you're going to see out of a first game. There's going to be sloppiness. There's going to be penalties. It is what it is. Probably going to be a turnover here or there. The one thing that kind of bothers me, and I know I talked a lot about my worries about Sirianni this year based off last season, but the one thing that people are saying, well, the Packers, they look at how they finished last season. They this is what they're going to be. We don't know. Just because this is how they finished last season doesn't mean that they're going to be gangbusters to start the season this year. You just never know. You don't know what you're going to see. I mean, the Eagles, as bad as they looked at the end of last season, I can't imagine they're going to start like that. That's going to bring it all back if they do. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't like playing the Packers on a neutral field. I would have much rather played them here in our stadium with just our fans, on top of it. But it is what it is. Nothing we can do about it. It's what the schedule makers wanted. They got it. They wanted two upper echelon franchises in that game. That's what they got. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this defense plays under Vic Fangio. It's going to be interesting to see what Kellen Moore does, if there's adjustments made in game, which we just didn't see enough of last season. I mean, it was basically 7 plays. It just seemed that that's all they ran the entire second half of the year. It was Jalen to the left, or to the right, rather. No one's open. Throw the ball. Throw it away. Jalen throws the ball away. Runs out to the right, throws it away. Or the brotherly shove play. Or that wonderful the screenplay to the receiver who has a defender right on him, or a running back who has a defender right on him, or it was like 5 to 7 plays. It seemed there was no creativity. There was none. And they have a lot of athleticism on that offense. There was no creativity. It was so vanilla. It was bland. It looked like preseason throughout the. Yeah, all right, they made up for not playing in the preseason. They played at the end of last season, their preseason games. That offense was a preseason offense for most of the second half of the season. and it was terrible. So I'm hoping that we see something different. And I understand that already we've had some fans, and of Dallas or whatever. Oh, you'll see about Kellen Moore, you'll see. And maybe it's just that team. They haven't been to an NFC title game since '95. They, we need to remind. We do, don't we? It's so fun. They haven't won us. They haven't even been to an NFC title game since '95. So maybe it isn't just the coaches there. Maybe there's something else at play. So as much as we're thankful for the Packers for last season becoming the first 7 seed to go on the road and win a playoff game in the Jerry world. Now, look, just because they played like that in that game and how the season ended, it doesn't exactly mean, this is going to be what they are now. We're going to see. Love is still a young quarterback in this league. He looked great at the end of last season. The Packers just seem to know how to pick the quarterback. I don't know, from Favre to Rodgers to Love. Whoever they get next will be the next, who will just wait for 5 years before he gets out on the field. He'll be the next great one, right? But we can't just say, just because of how last year ended, this is how it's going to be. You don't know. It's year to year. There's only a few teams that you know. The Chiefs. Right? The Niners. As much as I'd like for them to take a step back and not go to an NFC title game, they're probably going to be, back in the mix again this season. Baltimore's probably still going to be a division winner, a good team, right? The Eagles are probably still going to be a good team and contend for a division title and hopefully beyond. Right? The Packers, yeah. They're old hat. They're just about every year. They're always good, it seems. Maybe a few years here and there they kind of not, but for most years they're pretty good. The Lions are trying to become that, right? Some of these other teams, right? The Texans, teams like that, right? They want to become that, right? They're building on that, right? But again, it's like people are giving the Eagles a loss tomorrow night because of how the Packers played in the playoffs last year and how the Eagles played in the playoffs last year. And it just doesn't work that way. It's year to year. There's different players. There's different schemes. It's not the same. At least I would hope. Damn well, it isn't the same as poorly as it ended in Tampa Bay last year in the playoffs. I think it's going to be a better Eagles team this year than what we saw, and I think they have a good chance of winning tomorrow night. Now, will they? Time will tell. I know the Packers are a good team too. They're well coached. They have seemingly a young budding superstar as their quarterback. They have other weapons. Good defense. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not saying, hey, we're just going to walk over. No, it's going to be a hard fought game. And at the end, I would hope the Eagles come out on top and go to 1-0 in the season. They do seem to win the first game of the year every year under Nick Sirianni, so maybe that continues. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously. The game gets played tomorrow night, and I'm hoping for a win. I'm hoping, that we get a win. I'm going to be watching the game with Slim, so, we'll be hoping for an Eagles victory as we always do, I'm excited for this season. I am. I think there's a lot of interesting storylines going into the year. Like I said, I like the additions. I do wish we kept Reddick, though. That's the one thing that still kind of sticks in the back of my mind. But I am glad at least we have a veteran defensive caller in Fangio, and hopefully his schemes can certainly be miles better than what we saw last year. That was borderline unwatchable at times last season. It really was. It was tough. We were dealt a tough card last season. From that Niners game on, and even before that, because there were signs. And some of us were, oh yeah, but they're 10-1, but they keep winning. They're resilient. Look at them, and yeah. Then the resiliency kind of became ugliness and just. So let's not have a repeat of that this season. Again, I'm going to worry about. I'd be lying if I said I'm not going to worry about Sirianni And if he can keep control of the team all season, including times where they might go through where I'm sure they will go through some adversity, maybe lose a couple games, and be tested and be questioned. And if he is truly worth to be the head coach here, they'll make the changes and they'll play better and they'll overcome those adversities that you have throughout a football season. Injury and inconsistency and poor play and it happens. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It happens every year. I mean, for the most part. Some years it looks like, most of the season is just a dream. I mean, 2022, most of the season was a dream. I mean, they played so well on both sides of the ball and everything worked. Everything clicked. The year they won the Super Bowl, even with the injuries, they clicked. Everything worked. It was that magic carpet ride all the way through to win the Lombardi. 2022 almost happened, right? And then 05, same 04, 05, same thing, almost happened, right? Then we had other years where it just, it was ugly, and last season certainly was one of those years. After the start they had, it just completely fell apart. And I'm going to be concerned until they prove otherwise. And I hope he does. I really do, because as a fan, I just want my team to win. But I am going to be concerned about Sirianni throughout the season until, they prove me wrong. They prove otherwise, and they get through a season and everything's going well, and they win a division and have success in the playoffs. And, that's what we want. That's what this team has shown that they can do just 2 years ago. So I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, as perfect as you can get like it was then. But at least we know what this team is capable of doing, and we know what the coach is capable of coaching. He just has to get back to it. And the mistakes that were made last year, don't make a habit of those mistakes. You got to learn from it. You got to be better. This isn't college. This isn't high school. He talks about his days in high school and college a lot. I get that. He's proud of it. But you're in the pros now. And you can't have a redo of what happened last season and hope to keep your job. It's just not going. It's not going to fly this season. As much as they got away from it last season, you do that 2 years in a row, you're out. You're out. So he's got a lot of proving to do this season. And there are players like Jalen Hurts who has a lot of proving to do this season. And there's guys on that defensive side of the ball that have a lot of proving to do this season. And there are guys on the offensive line who have a lot of proving to do this season. So hopefully it works, and hopefully they can do that. And if that happens, we're going to have a great season. And we're going to compete for a Super Bowl title and be one of the last teams standing at the end of the season. This team has the talent to do it. They do. The question is, do they have the coaching to do it? And we're going to have to see. We're going to have to find that out as the season goes on. So anyhow, that's going to do it for Episode 1 of Season of the Fans, Season 11, the 2024-25 Philadelphia Eagles. Thank you all for joining in. We're going to have fun this season. We're going to do some more. We'll bring back the Festive Four. I know Slim's waiting. I know. We're not having the Festive Four today, but as the season goes on, we're going to have Festive with the 4-pack of winners. And Festive has been crunching the numbers. Festive's over there right now. You don't know. But Festive's over there. Because it was a poor season for Festive last year, too. And Festive wants to make amends. So Festive's been... Don't let that face fool you. Festive has been doing overtime work to make sure the picks are good this season. And we get back into the Festive Four as the season goes along. And as always, right, what do I always say, right? Leave those likes. Like. Subscribe if you haven't already done so to the channel. I am trying again. I will say this in every vid. I am trying again to get to 2K subs by December 31st, 2024. Maybe we'll push it to January 1st, 2025. But December 31st, 2024, I am hoping to get to 2K subs on this channel. We are at about 1,600 and change. We still have a ways to go, so make sure you're hitting the sub button. And when you do so, make sure you hit the bell icon so you're always notified to all future content from yours truly, whether it's this season of the fan series or the In the Life series of collecting You don't want to miss an episode. So those are the things, those are the rules of YouTube that you have to do. Like, subscribe, bell icon. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we toast a new season. This isn't alcohol. I needed alcohol last season, but this is my flavored water here. We got the Fuji apple, so we're gonna toast the new season, 2024-25 tonight. Chiefs and Ravens, and then the Birds tomorrow in a battle against Green Bay in São Paulo, Brazil. All right. Oh, I did a lot of talking. My mouth is dry. So, as always, go Birds, and I will see you all in the next one. All right, everyone, take care and enjoy the season.